Good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. Thank you very much for joining us today for our session, FSI204, How Resolution Life Unlocks Legacy Data to Power Transformation. Very excited about this story. I think you'll be able to learn a lot, and hopefully you can take some with you and apply some of these learnings at your own company. So my name is Moni Kim. I'm a solutions architect with AWS. And in about 8 to 10 minutes here, Tushar Kinger is going to join me, and he's going to talk about the rest of the story. This is our agenda today. I'll spend about perhaps 6 to 8 minutes talking about our thoughts on modernization on AWS, how we like to think about that, and how that's applied across different companies. And then Tushar is going to come on stage. He's going to share a little bit about Resolution Life, and then he'll get into some of the challenges and the approaches that he took to solve some of the opportunities that presented themselves. And then we're going to dive a little deeper, get into the technical details on specifically how you're able to really unlock that legacy data and really power your organization to tap into that data. And then finally, we'll conclude with some business results and the outcomes achieved as part of this journey. With that said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So in the context of modernization, focus to only really think about the technology pillar, which is what you see on the right-hand side here. At AWS, we look at it from 3 different pillars, which is the people, process, and technology pillars as part of an overall modernization journey. So let's go ahead and talk about the technology pillar as the first one. So what does this technology pillar really mean? It really means about going in and making technology decisions for your company so that you are really pushing forward your developers to release features quicker and get those features out to your customer much quicker. That's the overall objective. So as part of your decision-making process, what are some of those decisions that you can make in order to achieve that agility? In the modern architecture and technology space, this is really moving up the stack. So really leveraging the higher level abstraction services where you're not dealing with patching your servers, you're not dealing with scaling your servers, and you're really just focused on developing code and using the platform as it is to get those features out to your customer as quickly as possible. The other component to that is really moving from monolithic architectures to more of a microservices-based architecture, event-driven type architectures. The reasoning for that is because the rate of technology change is moving so fast that you do want to be able to tap into those new technology frameworks that's released out there. So these new architecture patterns, the more modern architecture patterns that I just mentioned, will enable you to do that so that you're not stuck with a legacy technology that you cannot get out of. So that's pillar number 1. The second pillar here is the people pillar. So in addition to the technology pillar, it's really looking at the people pillar and saying, how can I organize my organization for value, right? So this is a little different from organization where you're set up in departments where perhaps you just have a department, you have a networking department, and they all have separate goals. And this is really about transitioning to a format where individual teams, typically known as product teams, comprising of about 6 to 12 resources, all coming together with a single objective that is really focused on customer outcomes versus technical capabilities or platform capabilities. It's always about working backwards, understand the people that's part of this team, that they know what they're building, and that building block is helping to achieve a very specific customer outcome. So that's the people pillar. And then finally, the process pillar. So this is really about how can you move more from an agile methodology perhaps to an agile methodology? How can you enable your organization where instead of going through approvals and reviews where you shift left all those decision-making processes and build that in advance with guardrails and kind of all those permissions ahead of time? How can you enable the different product teams that you might have in your organization, self-service capabilities so that you remove those interdependencies across different groups and allow them to really move faster? How can you really evaluate those different processes, whether it's getting a port open or implementing a new security rule and so forth? How can you bake all that in advance and shift that left instead of doing it after the fact. So really, these three pillars is how we look at overall modernization, and just doing one alone is not going to really help you achieve that full agility that you seek. So definitely take these other two pillars into consideration. And the beauty of today's story is ResLife actually had the opportunity to tackle all three pillars, and you'll hear a lot more about that shortly when Tushar comes up here. And as part of the technology pillar, serverless, that's a big strategy over here at AWS. You probably heard it from a few announcements with that were previously fully managed services. We're offering a serverless version of that, right? So this really allows you to, let's just focus on your differentiator so that you can get those capabilities out to your customer quicker, because your customers don't really care that you're able to patch your infrastructure in 30 minutes. Like, none of that is really important to them, right? What's important to them is that they can go to whatever capability you provide and execute on that capability, and that you are responding in a 360 cycle, getting that feedback loop from your customers and releasing those features as quickly as possible. So serverless first has been a core strategy for many companies that are seeking to move faster, and this accommodates the technology pillar piece that I talk about. With that said, I think we're ready for you, Tushar. So if you're good to go, please come up.
All right, thank you, Moni. I see a lot of people in the crowd. Thanks for coming. My name is Tushar Kinger, and it used to be Tushar Kinger when I was in India. It changed to Tushar Kinger when I came here in the US. And I was okay with that. But recently I went to a coffee shop and I ordered a coffee and a croissant. And they asked my name for the order. So I gave my name. And I think a few minutes later on, I hear order for Chris Hahn. I was like, okay, between croissant and Tushar, how can somebody get Chris Hahn? But I was really lucky that there was no other Chris Hahn in the shop at the time. So I went ahead and I got my order. And I'm happy that some of you chuckled, because I'm looking to get like an alternate comedy, stand-up comedy as an alternate career, because the way Amazon is kind of ratcheting up with their services, it is really hard for us to keep up with it. And secondly, I come from Charlotte, North Carolina. Before I arrived to Charlotte, North Carolina, it used to be a very welcoming and very generous type of a city. But since I arrived, I see a lot of anger, a lot of madness in traffic. And I think it is because of the duration of the red lights, traffic lights. They stay red forever. A few days ago, I was behind another car and at the stop sign, and the car was there for like 1 minute. I went out of my car and knocked at the window of this guy, and he was looking at the stop sign. And I said, "What's up?" He said, "Stop sign doesn't change. It doesn't change to green." So that's the state of red lights and Charlotte. So that's why I'm looking to make you people laugh at the same time when we talk about the story. So let's talk about Resolution Life. Okay. Before we talk about Resolution Life, let's talk about life insurance, because that's how I personally got connected to the company and the mission. So when I joined the organization in September 2020, I was actually really fortunate to be in a call with the owner of the company, and his name is Sir Clive Cowdery. And he shared with us his personal story. He started his education at the age of 11, and he sold life insurance policies door to door. I could feel the compassion in that person towards insuring people's life. And that immediately connected me to this mission. And this is a noble profession. because we are not just engaged with a policyholder during their life, but also after death, we take care of their beneficiaries. So not every profession leads to or takes care of a person during life, and after their death takes care of their loved ones. So that's why I am in this profession, and that's why what you see here as the strategy statement, the focus is on customers, because that's how the company is founded, Resolution Life US. Now, how we do it, that's what Moni talked about just now: people, process, and technology. Resolution Life, it is in business of acquiring closed book of business, and it has M&A-based growth model. And what we do basically within the US, and we're going to talk about our journey within US. The journey within the US started with Voya Financial's life book of business. We signed a deal with Voya on January 4th, 2021. And with this deal, we got over 1 million policies, around 450,000 customer base, as well as we got 456 applications that at the time existed in Voya's ecosystem. And out of these 456, roughly 300 fall into this replace disposition. So the bulk of the work was replacing and transforming the existing ecosystem that Voya had at the time. And staying true to the mission or the strategy that we had, we were tasked with building a brand new digital ecosystem that comprised of customer service portal, customer portal, claims portal, as well as agents portal. And with that, with this deal, we got 14 admin systems. And we'll talk about, I'll take you into details around the admin system and some of the processes that we built around the admin systems. But just think like each admin system for another company could be like a M&A deal. Like we had 14 admin systems that we ingested one at a time into the digital framework that we built. So let's focus on people. So I'm going to talk about challenge. The beauty of a challenge is it can quickly turn into an opportunity if you apply the art of possibility. And I have to use art of possibility because I have one in the audience who came from Canada, and he wanted me to use art of possibility, so I had to use art of possibility in this session. But joking apart, so I'll say we were fortunate enough that the leadership, both at the technical level as well as at the organizational level, the people who got together, they had a keen interest in ensuring that business runs at a pace that can be supported by our people, process, and technology. The technology muscle, and we'll talk about how AWS helped us and how some of the other partners helped us. But the idea was, let's deliver value to business at a pace that technology can support, or people can support, or our process can support. Now, most of these folks have been in those big strategic room meetings where a lot of ideation happens, a lot of customer talk happens, a lot of strategy discussions happen. But when it comes to actual execution, there we see the reality of, I'll say, humans as a civilization, okay? We run into insecurities, we run into egos, we run into people clearly marking out their territories, and I'm not going to allow this person to come into my territory. We run into your people versus my people. And this is a vision of my people. Because if AWS makes an offer to anyone tomorrow, your person is going to run away. So what I'm trying to say, this pool, not only they knew what was not required, don'ts, they also knew what is required. And what was required, if I had to give you in like nutshell, it was the setting up the right operating model. Now this pool also had a bias, because we are humans, we have bias, right? This pool also had bias, but the bias was towards action. And not just any action. It was action that is aligned to the values of the company. And the values you saw in the strategy and what I talked about with the mission. So once the action and values, they work together, then you talk about delivering something really meaningful. And that's what happened in our scenario. So the approach, we had a question set of 1 million policies with the already running production systems. And at the same time, it was a green field for us. So we can go like full force on the startup mindset because it was green field. I'll give you an example. When we started our journey, there was one ETL tool, which was or is industry-leading ETL tool. As we started the journey, we quickly saw or figured out that tool is not going to work with the database solutions that we are using from AWS. So we got into action, we did a POC, and we proved that AWS Glue is more suitable for what we are doing with the database services we have. Now, we already got 3-year license for that tool. But our technology leaders, they took a quick decision. It was a very swift decision that let's switch from the existing tool of choice at the time to AWS Glue. In any other organization, and in my past experience, just because we bought that license for 3 years, all the ETL developers, they would have struggled to make that existing tool work with not so compatible database solutions, because somebody may have lost their jobs because they bought the license incorrectly without doing that feasibility analysis. But that's the difference I'm talking about in Resolution Life US and some of the other companies. Again, value and actions, they're aligned. Very important. So again, Moni touched upon not just technology, right? The people, if you have right people doing the work to their strength. What we insisted on from day one was to build a culture of listening, where we are not just listening to react, we are listening to respond. We are not listening to figure out what and how. We are listening to understand why this question is being asked by this person, why this person has this kind of an issue. And when you do that, you first connect with the person. I'm not thinking about a solution with a how. And I'm not even thinking about what this person is saying. I connect with the person when I go with why. And that's the culture we tried to build, and I think we have been successful in last 18 to 24 months. The third point is squads and chapters. So at the very onset, using the agile principle, we split our focus into two. One with squads, building a value line, delivering value to our business, and with chapters, building capacity so that we can grow, our people can grow on multiple fronts, including technology, including management, whatever it is, even agile coaching. So these two themes ran across in parallel since the start of the organization. Now with people, once we were done, the second task we had at hand was our process. We did not have any existing delivery model to look at, which was, to me, a blessing in disguise, because that took away some of the biases. Now what we did have as a challenge, we had this 3 years of separation, which is fixed with Voya. So we started in January 2021. It is going to end in December 2023. And it's a gradual transition or exit that's happening. So we had a very clear goal of separation as a challenge. Now, what did we do? We built cross-skill teams with each team comprising of our business SMEs, our technical people, even our end users, like customer service reps, sitting together with the product owners. And I've been in many discussions where I saw this acted as like a checks and balance just within the squad. Because my CSR, my customer service rep, is coming from an existing experience in Voya. They were using, even though the older products, but they had good idea about how business works. And our POs, they had transformation at heart. So they were just building, and we'll talk about low code and APIs and AWS-based database solutions. They were just focused on transformation. But these two together, it created that balancing act that don't run too far without creating a value for me. And on the other side, a PO challenging a CSR, don't think that if we did this type of business processing, this type of work item creation in our old system this way, that's the only way. We are going to improve it. So it worked really beautifully when you saw those counter forces balancing each other. We already talked about speed of decision making with the example I shared with you. But I think the key point here is the agile at scale. We created cross-skilled teams, and since the start, we had people like Moni, Nick, Paul from AWS. They helped us along the way, keeping us honest, giving us right guidelines and suggestions at the right time, because we are AWS-based shop. Now let's talk about technology. So we got 14 admin systems, and one of those was state-of-the-art in 1960. Now it is a piece of the art. We have just the load libraries. We don't have source code. We need to figure out reverse engineer. If that was the oldest one, the latest was somewhere in 90s that was built. So now you have to think what we are talking about. On the left side of the equation, we are talking about ecosystem, and any typical life insurance company, you will find a similar ecosystem. Ecosystem built in 80s, 90s. And on the right side, we are talking about serverless, cloud-first, API. And then there is a 3-year of journey where business still has to run. So we have to ensure the transition happens smoothly without impacting business, and we reach to the target state. And I talked about the approach. We are a cloud-first company. We do not have a data center as of today. Everything we built, again, API first. We use MuleSoft for API, and low-code, we use OutSystems. And we'll talk about low-code and APIs in one of the later slides as well. We'll talk about event-driven architecture when we go into details with ODH. And we use serverless Dynamo DB solution right now, and we'll talk about it as well within the data layer architecture description. So let's talk about the business objectives. When we started with Voya, after the deal was done, we had around 10% of our customer base who registered into the existing portal. And they will come, like, process 1 or 2 transactions during a year. And what happens is those transactions go in the back end and sit in a workflow system for a human to pick it up and process. That was the starting point. The objective that we had, obviously, was to improve this experience for the customers, create more and more straight-through process for our external customers. For our internal customers, who are the CSRs, we wanted to reduce, we were focused on reducing average handle time for transaction processing. So the focus was not just external, but at the same time, our internal customers as well. We had to build a solution that is reusable. Because like I said, we are M&A-based company. We are expecting to get more and more ecosystems, more and more admin systems ingested into this framework. So it has to be a reusable architecture or the solution that we are building. So here, let's talk about the presentation layer, which we used OutSystems to build our portals, the presentation layer. It's a low-code application platform. And here I'll give you an example from my personal experience. With my previous company, there was a production-ready system for customer service. And we had to upgrade it from version X to version Y. It was production-ready, things were working, but it was not compatible with few of the other interfaces or the periphery systems, so we had to upgrade it. It took us more than a year to upgrade that system. It was built in Java, high code, from version X to version Y. It took us more than a year. Here, we started on February 17th, 2021. That was our first sprint. And we went into production live on September 19th, 2021. So it was a 7-month journey where we built one application, but that one application had 76 screens at the time, 809 server actions. It was supporting 300 internal users. And we ingested out of 14, 3 admin systems, which was our bulk book of business. So I spoke with the OutSystems, and I used this 10 times faster because they claim it is 10 times faster. But if you have a right operating model, in my experience, it is much more than 10 times faster. And especially low code. I mean, I'm not just talking about OutSystems, it could be any other solution. But with low code as compared to high code, you can build the presentation part of it really quickly. The second part is the APIs. So across our technology landscape, APIs are like the nerves, as you guys may know. They're doing all the gets and puts and patches and delete, interacting with the data layer on one side and the presentation layer or the portal or the OutSystems in our case on the other side. But the beauty of it is, once we got one portal running, customer service portal, and we are using a domain-driven approach even for building the APIs. It is Accord-based. We'll talk more about it in some of the later slides. But once we had these APIs available for our customer service portal, we were able to reuse these APIs for our external customer portal. It took us 7 months to get the customer service portal up and running. It took us 5 months to get external customer portal up and running. And at the time, we did a rough estimation. It was more than 750 hours of man-hours saved, just because of the reuse of what we did in APIs especially, and some of the out-system. So this is a view of the digital customer service portal. We had few customer journeys. We met with our internal customers as well as our external customers, took their feedback on how do you want this page to be displayed, the navigation of through the portal, what data points you want us to present where. So it was a really meaningful exercise, and this is our customer portal. Now, one of the key feedback we got in those user journeys or customer journeys was when I land into customer portal, there is a lot of data on the landing page, and I get lost. So we actually went through refining exercise multiple times and got just the key data points that a person that policyholder is interested in when they land on the page. So that exercise, again, as part of our interfacing with design thinking, helped us design something that is meaningful for people who are going to use it. Okay, now coming into the data layer. ODH is the operational data hub. And let's talk about the data ingestion framework. We'll take a deep dive into it in the next slide. Here, at a high level, we use event-driven architecture. So we have event bridge, we have step functions, we have Lambda functions. We are even using SNS for notifications as different events process through this ecosystem. The incremental modernization, last point here, this is what I was talking about. It was not a big that we got all the 14 systems up and, data model already identified and already built, and we get the data for 14 systems in there at one go. No. So data model, and we'll also talk about data model in detail, but the process was incremental, again, true to agile principles. With every sprint, every other sprint in production, we expanded the data model, we ingested more and more data into the model. Every month, we added one or more admin systems into the framework. So here we go into details of what's happening in the data layer. The process starts from mainframes of the legacy systems, where we do CDC, which is change data capture. Once I have the delta for just today's batch or today's online activity, it goes through a transformation and standardization process because I have 14 systems, and on the other side, on the consumer side, I have one consuming database section, which is ODH. So I needed to standardize the data from mainframe into a single format that is acceptable to ODH. The files drop into S3 bucket in one folder through MFT. As soon as the file drops there, Event Bridge kicks into action. It executes a Lambda function that adds a timestamp for look-back issues and copies the file to ready-to-process folder within S3 bucket. And once the file is in the ready-to-process folder, the function gets triggered. Step function looks for any dependency. So for example, if I'm processing a policy file, I need to make sure the associated parties, associated roles with that policy file, that dependency is already sorted out in the database. And that's being done within the step function. The step function, after it ensures the prerequisites are complete, it hands over the control to the glue job. And in one of the later slides, we'll see how that is functioning. But the output of the glue job is a transformed record that gets upserted, transformed by a card standard that gets upserted into DynamoDB. And once that process is complete, then we create a CSV file for Neptune ingestion, which is a bulk load process that we do. After Neptune upload, we do a sync between Elasticsearch and Neptune. Because we are using Elasticsearch for API, calling these Elasticsearch for the policy or party or role type of searches that we are doing on the OutSystems portal. So APIs directly either interact with Elasticsearch or they interact with Neptune. We also use SNS, like I said before. So we get a state of what is happening through the batch, if the jobs are getting processed, or if there is any issue, we get an email notification, and our monitoring team, they get action, and they look at the issues. So here, let's talk about the building blocks. We talked about change data capture. Now, this is one of the biggest problems I personally have seen in my past experience, is on the mainframes, how do you figure out what data changed between yesterday and today? And here, we have two patterns that we are using. One, within the database, which is mostly the DB2 database on mainframe, we have columns in all the key tables that tracks the timestamp for any record change. So if it's a new insertion, we get a timestamp when the insertion happened. Or if it is an update, we get a timestamp of when the update happened. At the end of the batch, one of the jobs will extract all those records that have a timestamp of today's cycle. The other pattern we have, in some instances, we don't have a DB2 as a database solution. We have vSem files. In those scenarios, we have a temporary storage. So all the online day activity or the transactions that process through our CICS jobs, they are tracked in a temporary database. If I change, let's say I did a name change on one of the existing systems, it is held in a temporary storage as part of my online day activity. And again, at the end of the day, a process will run and extract all the transactions, or party information or policy information, standardizes it, and sends over to ODH. Next key step is data mapping. Now this was a huge, and I'll say it was also a manual effort that we had to undertake. What's happening here is, once you got the files from mainframes, you need to figure out where these files are going in Dynamo. And what happens here is, we get the files, we look at the data points, and then we go to building the logical data model. That's where the next stop is. We do this mapping, we expand our model based on the data that is coming in. So if this is the first time I'm getting holding as an entity, I'll expand my logical model to say I'm going to get a holding table or a policy table. And what are the key data points that are going to come in? Those are the data points that are there in the incoming feed. So this mapping exercise from your target to source using a card and a card fit for purpose, we are just, as part of this process, we were just expanding the model based on what is the data that is coming in. I'm not going to go and look at holding as a full entity or all the other sub-entities as per the card model that I should build. I'm not going to do that. What data is telling me, I'm just going to expand my model according to the data. Okay, so once the data files are available for processing by the step function. We talked about the dependency resolution and all. Let's talk about the glue job. What happens, the incoming file has a specific layout, which we call as header, and I cannot open the attachment here. That's the detail of the glue job is there. So we have the layout that applies to the incoming file to read and understand what is coming in. That is our step one. Then we do load lookup, which is nothing but the existing. So if I receive, let's say, a party file, just the delta, I'm going to look at the DynamoDB, the existing table, load it into Spark data frame, making it ready for the append. At the same time, the incoming file that has come in, one of the key things, and this is a really important point, we first do a referential integrity check on that file. Because we are using NoSQL, so referential integrity was not out of the box. So we had to spend time on ensuring if I receive, like the example I gave before, if I receive a policy file, I need to ensure all the parties that are related or attached to this policy, they are already there in the database. And that's the referential integrity that we built within the glue job. So that is the next step, ensuring referential integrity is happening. The third step there is the actual transformation. So now we take the data from incoming file, we apply the accord translation. And this accord translation is coming from the accord tables that are, again, sitting in our DynamoDB. All of this is happening in Spark data frame at the same time. If I receive, let's say, a product type of whole life, and as per accord, the product code for whole life should be 1. That is sitting in a Dynamo table. And within this glue job, we are doing the transformation. At the end of that step, we get a transformed record, which is as per accord standards. And then it goes to upsert into the DynamoDB. Once that process is complete for Dynamo, we run queries for edges, Neptune database, for edges, which is nothing but the relations, and the nodes or the vertices. That's where the properties are being built. We create CSV files. Sometimes in some scenarios, we just create one CSV file just for the edges. In some scenario, we create 2 files for vertices as well as for edges. And now we have DynamoDB already updated and CSV file ready to be uploaded to Neptune database. And the last step of the process is to do a bulk load into Neptune for these CSV files. This is just a small snippet of how the graph database looks like. So we have holding as one of the nodes here. It has its own property. It is related to beneficiary node through has beneficiary relation. It is related to agent through has agent. So agent could be a servicing agent or could be a writing agent. And we create those relations in the graph model. Again, this is a really huge picture. If I show you the entire thing, I'm just showing what you can grasp on one screen. So with this, we talked about accord fit for purpose. And that is one of the key points, because I've been involved in my past attempts where accord was really a scary word. And it is, because it is really heavy. If you think about the whole thing, your TX103, 12.3. But here, going into this journey, we did a heat map analysis, which was, had in my 14 systems, 5,000 data points. How many of those data points are actually with data? And if the answer is, don't know, 70%, I'm going to discard 30% from the onset. I'll focus on 70, and I'll do a prioritization. I'm first going to get party, then I'm going to get policy. And that's how model evolved. And because we chose DynamoDB, a NoSQL solution, we were able to iteratively improve the model without relooking at the whole thing the whole time. So DynamoDB definitely helped us with the approach that we took with the data modeling. And you can see on the right, the MuleSoft APIs, they interact with the Neptune or Elasticsearch. So we first go to Neptune, we get a UUID, and that UUID, using that UUID, we go to Dynamo to get the actual data associated with that item. That's the overall flow. This is the progression of how the admin systems were ingested into the digital framework. So we started, like I said, September 21 with 3 systems. In January 22, we had our 4th system ingested. And then since then, every single month, we either had 1 or more system ingested into the framework. And around September this year, actually August this year, we were able to complete all the systems. Now we are just looking at some of the extensions. For some of the systems, based on the ROI, we didn't expand the whole thing. We didn't build the whole thing. We just looked at what we call stub records. So like business said, for system A, if I need 500 data points based on the calls I'm getting, for this system B, I just need 50. So give me 50. So we gave them 50, and now we are slowly expanding to whatever makes sense for business. So at the end of it, what are the results that we could measure? We talked about the customer service portal that we built in 7 months, a customer portal that has the same backbone as customer service portal we built in 5 months. We ingested 14 admin systems into the framework in 17 months, and that included our million policies coming into the data hub. Now, what you see here is 7,500 or 7,500 persistent data points and 2,000 non-persistent data points. So persistent data points are the ones that, through ETL, we were ingesting into ODH. Non-persistent are the ones that are dynamic calculations that happen on the mainframe systems, on legacy systems. And we never intended to bring those calculations out of the admin system. So if I take an example of surrender penalty, there are more than 10 modules in Vantage that gets executed to compute a single surrender penalty using 3 tables, what they call as product wizard tables. So we never intended to bring that logic outside of mainframe. So we, using our APIs and certain middleware solutions, we go to the mainframe and perform the calculation on the fly and retrieve the result. That is what 2,000 non-persistent data points are. But right now we are in the exercise of looking at, is it really 2,000? Or are there data points that could become persistent? So every month we are increasing the persistent data point base. And whatever will be left at the end of it is really the calculation that mainframe is going to do, or backend is going to do. With this, overall, we were able to build a robust technical ecosystem that is right now supporting 1 million policies and is ready to take 1 million more. So for our customers and my peers, employees, we were able to reduce the business transaction processing from days to seconds. And I'll give you an example. Beneficiary change is a high volume transaction that we process. Before, in our old world, that transaction from inception, from request to actual completion, it used to take 2 days. Right now, it takes 10 to 15 seconds. And 2 days by far, so I'll give you another story. I was coming from Charlotte, going to, I think, Pennsylvania. I sat next to a life insurance agent, coincidental, and he claimed he was top 15 in the US. So I asked him, how much time, if I have a beneficiary change request, how much time your system will take for a policy worth $1 million? He said, it's funny you ask me, because I got a request for one of the high-value customers, and it took us 6 months to make that change. Which is the reality. So I feel we were fortunate that we had 2 days when we took over, and we were able to make it for a few seconds. Next thing I want to talk about is the vendor partnership. So in this journey, Cognizant has been our key vendor partner supporting the data layer solution. And starting from the POC, ETL POC I talked about, where they were instrumental, their data practice was instrumental in helping us out, to today, where we are doing a POC on Neptune serverless to go from managed services to Neptune serverless. They are helping us out. So it has been really a great partnership, and I thank our Cognizant team in helping us out throughout this journey, and again, keeping us honest throughout this journey as well. The other partner I want to make sure I mention is Entity Data. They are our system integrators. They helped us lay down the foundation of both OutSystems as well as MuleSoft platform. And they even, today, they support the platform. They helped us with the adoption of these two platforms, getting the low-code adopted within the organization, within ResLife US, as well as the APIs. So we were able to deliver at such a fast pace because we had Entity Data helping us out. Now, one of the wise men once said to me, agile is a mindset. Entity Data brought people with the right mindset for agile. They helped us create right-sized user stories, epics, and then execute on those user stories in the low-code and API space. So we built this reusable data ingestion framework, and we are on track for separation. We are still 1 year away, almost, from actual separation, but we have not missed a single TSA so far from exit with the Voya. So we are on track with our TSAs, with our separation journey, while we are so much focused on the transformation at the same time. What you see on the right is the scores from our customer portal, external customer portal. So the satisfaction score is roughly 80%, and this is a direct feedback from our external customers. At the time when the snapshot was taken, frustration behaviors showed us 0%. So we talked about what we accomplished, and we did talk about it was not easy. What are the lessons learned, and where do we go from here, where we are right now? First thing we realized, the variations across the life insurance products. We kind of underappreciated it when we started the journey. So between term life, whole life, ISWL, from the surface, when we started again, it looked like that it is going to be a major undertaking for us to differentiate these products. But when we went in, it became pretty clear to us that how we present the data and the transactions we are processing for one product are not going to apply the exact same way for the other product. So we came up with the solution. Again, this is the beauty of low code. We came up with the solution, we call it app display config, where we build, again, a small application within our CSP that at just one click, if maturity date is applicable to product A and expiration date is applicable to product B and maturity date is not applicable to product B, I'm going to use my app display config to say, apply maturity date for product A, apply expiration date for product B. Without compiling the code, the application displays the screens, the fields as we want. We extended on this concept, and we are even allowing transactions by product or by system, because not every system we are going to make a straight through. And I gave you the example of 1960s admin system. We are not thinking about building a straight through for that system. The adoption strategy. Now, this was a really tough one for us. In life insurance space, the interaction between the policyholders and the applications that we are building is like once or twice a year. Because some of them will set up their EFTs for the payment. They come generally maybe for like a Benny change, owner change time, name change, etc. But it is not that frequent. It took us time to get on track with the adoption. But now we have taken a number of steps. We are doing paper mailing, we are sending out emails, and we were really creative when we blocked their ACH or one-time payment on the existing portal, and they did not have any other option but to come to the new portal. So it worked out okay. The third point here is the value creation versus capability building. So I said in one of the previous slides, squads versus chapters. Now, because of the pace and the ask of the value delivery, during our first year, first 15 months, I'll say, or 18 months, we were so focused on value creation that the capability building was not running at the same pace as value creation. But now we took a step back, and I have one of my peers sitting in the crowd here. His chapter area has 100% AWS certified team members, squad members. So we have taken up on the capability building as we are delivering value. The last point here is the separation and transformation in parallel. This was a constant juggling of priorities. And I remember having so many discussions within the technology leadership team that if separation is pushing us because of the time crunch, we should not take like a shortcut on the transformation. And this was always, again, like a balancing act. Sometimes we could make calls in favor of transformation, let's do it. Other times, because of the separation priorities, we had to run by the schedule. So this is again for us, learning that running separation and transformation in parallel, it takes us back to the root of agile principles, which is a constant management of priorities. And that's what we learned through this process. I think with that, I'm going to close. If you have questions, I think there is a mic there.